Back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carey, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com, where we welcome back in for a short time. Look, this is the only place you're going to hear his name said correctly. Josh McQuistion joins the podcast.
You do sound bad.
Something's going on.
Well, I feel like it's a precursor for a sickness.
COVID's going around, and
COVID's back. It's awesome.
I will also tell you, I wouldn't say I'm sick, but I have felt a little bit of an itch in my throat.
Jesus.
I'm not sick.
I don't think I'm sick either. I think it's
just woke up and my voice was kind of gravelly this morning.
It is. It's definitely gravelly. I didn't notice it when you first said it, but it definitely is. Sounds like
I thought something was wrong with the audio.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, Carey doesn't sound right.
It's like it's on the back end of a weekend that you smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes.
And I'm not a smoker, but I have smoker's throat right now or something. No, I don't feel weird or anything. I feel great. So Josh is back, at least for a little bit. Now he should be the one with the gravelly voice. He's been out drinking and fishing for the last few days.
Yes, I was loving life. Now, if everybody could see me, I've got a good sunburn on the nose and face. But in general, man, had a great time. You know, I know it's a perfect day to talk about my fun family trips and the money I'm spending and that kind of thing. But yeah, we made a run at a blue marlin. Did not get it. Was very disappointed. Shout out to our boat crew, Piggy, and a man named Eddie. That no relation to my knowledge, but
that's not
a solid fishing crew.
Go ahead. No, we probably have something that we need to address here off the top. And look, we didn't know. We knew this was coming. We didn't know it was going to be announced today or put in action today. And we've already gotten apologies from On3 for not getting a better heads up. But the price has increased on Soonerscoop.com. It's been $9.99 for 20 years without an increase. And look, you know, we appreciate that people spend their hard-earned money subscribing to our website. We feel like, you know, your $9.99 a month has been well taken care of in what we do. I make no apologies about, you know, the money that we take in, because I think we above any, not just in this market, but across the country. Other than, I said this on the board, I think other than Texags, you won't find another website that has reinvested in itself like Sooner Scoop has, and that starts with you know, bringing George in, you know, from the Denver Broncos where he was covering them, giving you guys the best, building these facilities, you know, having offices on Campus Corner. It is all to make Sooner Scoop better. And look, in this day and age, the reality is media companies are struggling, and we've seen locally, a terrible situation develop with the media company that tried to start and folded and you know, left a lot of people out to dry. And everybody's got to come up with, you know, different and new revenue streams in order to keep media businesses alive. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but you know, I think I'm someone that recognized that quite a while ago. And look, we're not people that love the aggregation game, the engagement game that's out there on Twitter. Where
I think we've been pretty outspoken about that before.
Yeah. And, you know, we do write articles that, you know, are informational that may not be in depth. I mean, for instance, yesterday I told George, like, hey, let's get something up on the National Award watch list stuff. And it's not heady stuff, but it's just, you know, things that we do because it's a little bit of news out there. It's you know, something OU fans will be interested in. So we do a lot of things that are, you know, we'd rather be here at 8 o'clock at night trying to figure out where Dominic Williams is going to go. I mean, that's fun for us. And we love, you know, being a part of that process and chasing down information and letting you guys know everything we're hearing as it's going along. And, you know, since George has got here, Eddie, myself, Josh, I mean, we all do, you know, as good a job as anybody in keeping you up to date when breaking news is happening. So we can't do that without the subscribers. I think, you know, that media company I was talking about had no subscribers, and you guys are our bread and butter. You guys are the reason that we're able to do all this stuff. And yeah, the YouTube stuff is out there, and the podcast stuff has been going on for 10 years now. I think this will be our 10th season doing the Unofficial 40 podcast. So yeah, price increases happen. It's $11.99 a month. It's $119.99 for annual subscriptions. It's the first price increase in 20 years. And I think all of us have streaming services that we subscribe to, and we've all seen those raise their prices since we've started, whether it's Amazon, Netflix. Netflix is what's it take, like $16 is like the minimum subscription
I honestly
to Netflix
don't
now?
know. It just rolls over, and I'm like, okay.
And you get little notices saying your Netflix is going up.
My parents pay
I don't
for
even know if I read that email when it comes
you use
out.
your parents' Netflix account?
Yes. Yeah. Of course I
And
do.
your dad is probably proud of you for that because
Yeah.
he's a financial advisor.
Exactly. Saving money.
That's beautiful.
Don't use your Sooner Scoop parents' account, okay?
I think my Peacock
George.
subscription has gone up 3 times in the last year. It feels like I mean, it's $5.99 to $6.99. It's like clearly they didn't price it very well from the outset.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go up to $14.99. We went up to $11.99, and we went up $20 annually. So, and I'll say this: I think everybody knows that's been with us for a long time. We're not just putting that money in our pockets. I mean, it's going back into the business. So, and I'm not trying to get Josh enraged here, but I think Josh can tell you more than anybody how much we invest back in the business. So that's where any gains that we get are going. So, and I'll say this: we love being partners with On3 as well. And I know it gets into recruiting rankings and why does On3 have this guy lower than this other service? That's just going to happen. That's just normal. I get it. But they are great partners for us. And they are helping us, to get better, to make the site better, to be a better media company. And they have, we went through 6 months of negotiations with them, and they've invested in us, and they believe in us. We believe in them, and we're not going anywhere. So, look, it is what it is. We're raising rates just a little bit, but like I said, I think we are proud to stand on what we've been doing with your $9.99 a month. We'll make you even prouder with your $11.99. So, end of story. Unless Josh
Joe
wants to ask.
Biden.
Don't bring politics into the podcast, George.
Again, I started with Rivals was then OU fans 23 years ago, and it was $9.99. I left for 4 days, and people like this now, and people are like, Josh is on vacation all the time, blah blah blah. I used to just check out of June and July. Nothing was happening. There was no reason to be around. That's how much it's changed, and our price hasn't changed that entire time. And now, I mean, we've got 5 full-time guys. Back then, it was me. I was a student. Krabby was helping with stuff. Like, there was nobody around. Even when it was just, it was Carey and I. It was 2 of us for a long time. And there was no way we could pump out content the way George, Bob, Eddie, myself, or the way we all do it would never have been possible a long time ago. It's kind of amazing that we've only made this increase. Now, it's not a look out at more's coming. I'm just saying it says a lot for, like Carey was saying, the planning On3 is put into this, the way I know people hate some of the ads. That makes it easier to keep these prices down. I mean, that's another thing that facilitates a lot of these things that we can do. So they've been a great partner. They believed in us from early on. We've known the leadership at On3 for 20 years. I mean, we've known a lot of those people a long time. So, I think we're just going to do nothing but get better. We're still, believe me, again, going on multiple vacations here. They could be a not fancier vacations if Carey would stop spending all this money on all these things to make the site better, and I could just steal from the coffers. But it doesn't work that way. We put this money into Scoop, and we'll continue to make it a better product.
All right, thanks, Josh. I appreciate you chiming in there. So anyway, I know you have been out on a boat and things like that, but I'm sure once you've got back, or you've been getting a lot of texts and calls and DMs and stuff. But let's just go over, since you haven't been on since the Under the Stars event happened. give us kind of your roundup from that and the positives that you feel came out of it.
Yeah, talking to a lot of those guys, and it was one of those deals where I'm sitting there late that night. We're getting, we're packed up. We're getting ready to go. We end up staying at the airport hotel, so I'm using their Wi-Fi, and it's all, it's kind of shaky and crappy, and I'm going through all that. And then the next morning, I'm literally sitting at my gate trying to write out the story so that everybody would have something to read before I left. And there's no question for me, the story that came out of that was Trey Taylor, the quarterback from Illinois that is made the trip down. And, for those that haven't read the story, you should go back because he was great. He offered a lot of real insight into what was going on with him. He came in early that day because he wasn't going to be able to actually stay for the End of the Stars event. And OU, Seth Luttrell, Brent Venables, everybody kind of moved their schedules around so they could be there with him. And he was adamant. He's like, OU's in my top 3. I'm probably going to be back for a game early in the season. I think Oklahoma is a very real contender there. I think even us as a site, obviously I'm the lead of that in recruiting. I put a lot of focus into Peyton Houston, and as I look at it, I think Trey Taylor is a much more realistic possibility than I would have thought 2 months ago, or even after he was offered at camp in June. So I think things are moving in a really good direction there, and I think that was kind of one of the headlines. But just him talking about his first chance to hang out with Brent Venables and getting the all-in chip and, kind of really starting to make those steps towards, maybe someday being a part of Oklahoma's 2027 class. And I know that seems far off, but OU's 2026 quarterback's already done. So 2027 is where the focus has to be. And I think that's you're seeing Oklahoma kind of move in the right direction there.
Josh, could it be said, now as we enter, I guess this would be technically his, first or second cycle just in terms of Seth Luttrell and what he's looking for in a quarterback. Can you see some similarities between Jaden O'Neal and the Taylor kid?
Yeah, there are some. I mean, and again, he was a kid at camp, and I said it at the time, I didn't get to watch him as much as I wanted to. I can't remember what the deal was. There was some reason I didn't get to watch him. It wasn't. I can't remember what the story was. I think I got stuck watching not O-line, D-line, but the running backs too long or something. Anyway, but I do. When you watch him on tape, Taylor's another kind of bigger framed guy. With Peyton Houston, it's a little different. He's a little more probably like Michael Hawkins when you're talking about frame, like what he kind of looks like. With Taylor, I think he's a little bigger, a little broader, good athlete, much like Jaden, can absolutely move around. I mean, I think anybody that's watched Seth Luttrell's offenses through the years knows that's going to be a prerequisite. They may not be Michael Vick, but they have to be able to pick up yardage with their feet and some of the zone read stuff and, the run pass option things that they're going to do. So I see some similarities there. I like the kid a lot. I like his demeanor. Again, he was the one that really went out of the way to talk about like how much it meant to him that Oklahoma set that time aside. Because I didn't know. We were just kind of talking, and he was telling me all this. And Eddie, I mean, you've done enough of these interviews. Like, these kids don't always notice that stuff. Like, they just kind of think that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm a big recruit. Make this time for me. But he was talking about really having, like I said, his mom having her first chance to really talk to coach, to Brent Venables. And I just, like I said, it may have been a little bit of post-visit high and, all that was going into it for him. But again, I would be hard-pressed based on the things that he told me to believe that OU's not right there with anybody else.
All right, more from Josh McCuistion coming up on recruiting under the stars. But what happens when you have really good vision is you can start to see better at night. And I bet Eddie Radosevich is a hell of a night driver. First, he's got the Eskridge Lexus with the great headlights. But that's also got to lead to some good driving, which you're going to be doing some driving in the SEC this year. Probably be a good time to think about getting LASIK if you're going to be out there on the roads driving to all the new cities across the SEC.
Absolutely. And, the one thing about it is I do have great vision, so that won't be, that won't be one of the things that I'll be able to blame when I end up hitting one of the commenters from the YouTube show. But anyways, Enjoy Vision is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. The combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What they're doing for the Unofficial 40 listener is they're giving $400 off of LASIK. It's with a laser in your eye. All you got to do is go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY with me.com. Use promo code U40 if you're interested in LASIK, $400 off. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
And now we get back to the fresh perspective look around from Enjoy Vision.
Josh, I also think it's something that, you look at, and he didn't have to make this trip. I mean, everything is starting up. I would imagine that things are ramping up in the end of July, beginning of August for his high school team in Illinois. I think it speaks to something that he just made the trip back down. He was just here a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right, because I believe he did that one, and then I think he went to Michigan State, and I think that was going to be it. Again, you guys have to forgive me. I'm playing catch up a little bit, but I believe that was the end of his plans for the summer, because, for those that don't realize it and say, oh, well, Oklahoma high school football or Texas high school football won't really get started in earnest for another week or so here. That's up north. They start earlier, so they're not playing in December in Chicago. I mean, so they start a little earlier. The clock starts running a little faster. So I think it says a lot, because like you said, he was there, just a little over a month before, like about, 5-6 weeks beforehand, and then comes right back down. And, for those, like I said, I know there's been a lot of focus on Peyton Houston, and I get it. I will say it like this. I am currently working on my high school football schedule for the season. My plan is to see both of these guys, because I a week ago, I would have said, I'm going to see Peyton Houston. I don't know about Trey Taylor. As it stands now, I think I need to see both of them, because I would kind of expect OU to get one or the other, but I don't know who it's going to be, and I could see an argument for either at this point.
There were a lot of guys, on campus for the Under the Stars event that are already committed. Any feedback from those guys? Or for a lot of those guys, it seems like, returning to Norman nowadays is just kind of like, coming back to, I don't know, I guess see your family to a certain extent for a lot of the guys that are already committed.
Yeah, the three guys committed at Under the Stars were, Jaden O'Neal, Jonathan Hatton, and Ryder Mix. And talking to all three of them, I think they just enjoyed getting to talk to each other. Sure. Because you know how that is. Like, they're part of the same class, but Jonathan's from San Antonio, Ryder's from Dallas, and of course Jaden's from Southern California. It's not like they've crossed paths a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I think it was a good opportunity for them to kind of get to know each other, kind of hang out. And, obviously they'd already texted and knew each other a little bit, but it's just different when you get to hang around, guys that are going to be your teammates going forward. And, Ryder kind of mentioned, really, it was his first chance to meet Jonathan Hatton. He'd already met Jaden, but he hadn't met Jonathan Hatton, and those two kind of hit it off. And I think just based on what I know of Jonathan and what I know of Ryder, I would guess they're a pretty good mix. Both kind of very just motivated, kind of point A to point B personality types. And so I think they really, really did well. And you talk to Jaden. I mean, Eddie, it's going to shock you, but Jaden was, man, it was cool. Like, everything, like, Jaden just, it's all very, like, yeah, we're going to be fine. This class is going to go well. Like, I mean, he was just very nonchalant about where Oklahoma is with 2026. And I don't mean that to say, like, he's not working hard or he's not, very engaged. He 100% is. But I do think and again, I want to really sit down and talk with Jaden. I won't pretend I've had that opportunity, but hoping to here in the next 24, 48 hours. And when I do, I really want to just kind of get his vibe beyond, what he thought. I think I got the impression he felt like the groundwork had been laid. I want to kind of see, and, we're going to report on it. Where does he think Oklahoma made some impressions? Where does he think, okay, this guy sounded really good? And Jaden may tell me some of that stuff off the record. We'll kind of have to let that come out as it will. But I don't think there's any question. You look at it and you look at this list of about 25 guys. it would really surprise me if OU didn't have, they've got 3 current commitments. If by next signing day it was like 8 to 10, it wouldn't shock me. I think things from what I heard went very well.
You know what? This is really strange. I lost track of where some quarterbacks went. I think we were talking about this yesterday. I had no clue that Malachi Nelson was at Boise State.
Yeah, I remember thinking, other than just seeing it on like Twitter or whatever, I would just remember thinking, what a strange journey that has been from his backyard when I was out there in LA. The day that he committed to Oklahoma to everything that happened in Los Angeles and staying with Lincoln Riley and going to USC, and then obviously ending up at Boise State, or I guess not even really going to USC.
That, and I
guess he went for
I didn't know that. I can't even remember if it was Gary or Jerry Bohannon. Is it BYU fighting for
I
the
did
starting
not
job?
know that. I did not remember that.
Is the kid that played against OU at quarterback back at BYU?
Yes, the Retzlaff guy.
He's still there?
Yes, he's battling with
him.
Bohannon.
I didn't think he was terrible. I mean, I guess he did throw a 100-yard
Keenan
pick
Slovis
six,
was their quarterback to start the season. Like, he was expected. I think he even warmed up in that game, didn't he? Like, we didn't know
it was
who was going to play
the whole week. Yeah.
Because I remember we talked to a BYU guy, and they even seemed like he was going to be back for that game. But, I mean, it kind of goes to show you, like, the Lincoln Riley high school evaluations are a little iffy.
Yeah.
I mean, it started with Austin Kendall.
It's definitely weird.
Well, it started with, what's his name that got kicked off? Neon guy, wore neon all the time.
Chris Robinson.
Yes.
That was just a character. I think he was, he played for Lane Kiffin. He wasn't bad in college, but he got kicked off that team too.
Yeah, he's a kid that just couldn't get out of his own way.
Not to say every player that he recruited had character issues, but there were a few that
I would say
did.
That's the biggest difference between Lincoln Riley's recruiting and Brent Venables is Lincoln had no problems taking questionable character guys, or he didn't look into their character enough. I mean, he had a triple robbery on his watch.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Guys, I mean,
it's a fact.
But you talk about all his recruiting, like the quarterback success, and obviously well-deserved. He's recruited one of those guys. It's Caleb.
Yeah.
Caleb's the only guy he's ever recruited.
And he wasn't his first choice.
Superstar.
If Brock Vandegrift would have stayed committed, Caleb Williams might never have been here.
That is such an overlooked sub-story. Like, obviously we know it, but nationally, people love to forget that Brock Vandegrift would have been Oklahoma's starting quarterback, and Caleb Williams is probably at LSU.
I'm so interested to see.
And Brock is at Kentucky, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm so interested to see what he does this year.
Which we have Mark Stoops on the Family Business later on today. But yeah, but he's going to play in an offense, and I think, they had, we talked about this, their offensive coordinator got hired away by an NFL team, wasn't it? Is he Baker's OC now? Yeah, he's Baker's OC now.
Liam Cohen. But,
Mark Stoops does not have a high-flying offense. He likes to control the game. So, Vandegrift might fit in pretty well in that system.
Yeah, who knows? He just hasn't been able to get on the field. He's one of those guys that it feels like has been in college for 5 years.
Yeah.
And really hasn't been able to play because he's been sitting behind really good quarterbacks at Georgia.
Yeah, it's just wild. You have so much of a lifespan as a quarterback now in college football.
Yeah, especially if you can, especially if you're good enough. And
you're going to get paid, even if you're not a great quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is like, especially if you have a little bit of a name about yourself, if you're really highly recruited out of, high school, you're going to get an opportunity somewhere in today's world. And you got like 5 or 6 years to use it.
Well, did anybody watch Dylan Gabriel last year and think, oh, he's going to make $1 million going somewhere?
Well, I don't think it never crossed my mind that Dylan Gabriel wasn't going to be, he was going to be playing college football this season.
I don't think it crossed his mind either.
No, it didn't.
No.
He was pretty, brutally honest about kind of where he was when we talked to him on the YouTube show, right after he announced his commitment to Oregon.
By the way, Eddie disgraced the name of Dylan Gabriel yesterday.
How's that?
Getting beat by George in EA football.
Yeah, it was the second time I've played the game. I need to play more.
It should be up
It is. It should be noted that it was a very close game in the end. Although George acts like he ran away with it.
It was 38-14, and I screwed around a few times.
He beat my ass. There's no doubt about that.
But I should. I played the game
better.
a lot more. I will say I am 1-0 in the Sooner Scoop Dynasty League. Air Force took down the powerhouse FCS East 59-21 in game 1.
And that's an All-American mode, right?
Yes, I'm also in on a few 5 stars. So we'll see if we can get.
Are you going to do what it takes?
Oh yeah.
So do you all like finish a year together?
Yes. Yep.
And
everybody has to.
And then you have an off season where everyone recruits, and then you go again next. You wait till next football season to do this?
No. I'll play my second game today.
No, but I mean your second season. Is the first season only for this football year?
What do you mean?
Will you move on to a second season?
I bet we're into the second season in a month. We'll be into 2025 season in a month.
Yeah.
We play 2 games a week, pretty much.
I honestly have only done, by the way, again, not a good thing to admit during a day of a price increase, but I did buy the PS5 for the office just so guys have something to do in their spare time. We'll be sitting around a lot during
I was about to say, it's about to get really amped up here.
But it was like, when you buy it all, it was like $900. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's quite the purchase. I definitely would have done it on my own. So I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that you jumped off that ledge.
But the only thing I've done so far is practice, which I don't mind. I mean, I practiced and I played one game. I played against Nebraska.
Yeah, you got to play the games because
Dylan Raiola is an interception machine.
Yes, yeah, I played.
Did you know that he is not favored to win the starting job at Nebraska?
Really?
According to Vegas.
Well, that's who is. I don't even know who the other quarterback is.
Hedgar Hedgesson or something like that. Some dude with a Viking name.
I don't buy that. It's going to be Raiola.
He's the odds-on favorite. How are you going to argue against the odds?
Yes.
Well, go put your money down.
That sounds like a good bet. Yeah, exactly. And I'm with George. I'd make the bet too.
I bet
Heinrich
Raiola.
Harburg is the guy's name.
Heinrich Harburg, yeah.
All right, well, God bless him. I don't think he's the future of Nebraska
odds
football.
to start the first game. It's a little bit different than who's going to be the quarterback at the end of the year.
Sure.
And he's the guy that played after Sims went out last year, and actually kind of got them on a run
compared to Sims. He was awful.
Yes. So, and honestly, Sims is one of the few things that's ever made me question Rule, because I'm such a, you guys know, we've talked about it before. I'm such a big Rule guy, but he was so gung-ho about what Sims was going to be. He convinced everybody, we see some things in Sims that are really good. And then you watch that Colorado game and you're like, this is not Division 1 level football. This is horrible.
He just couldn't hold on to the football.
They thought Sims was going to be Jalen Milroe, basically.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
By the way, did the Hedgar guy, did he get hurt and then replaced by Purdy?
I think that is right, because they won 5 games in a row or 4 games in a row, something like that with him. And guys, if you remember, there was a point when Nebraska was a game or 2 away from having a chance to be in the Big Ten championship game.
Because the division was awful.
Oh yeah, just horrible. But they played pretty well, because he had taken better care of the ball. And, their defense was really good, and they were just kind of winning, they were playing that Big Ten West, just football and 3 yards in the cloud of dust kind of stuff. But once he got hurt, they just went right back to chaos. And then even when he did come back, then he started, having trouble taking care of it. It was a mess from that point on.
All right, so moving forward, spring practice coming up. They did start practicing today. We're podcasting this. Just as the USA is taking on,
South Sudan
in the Olympics. But so we're a little bit in the afternoon. They did practice this morning for the first time. That's, just running around with helmets and in shorts, basically.
I heard Jackson Arnold looked fantastic today. Might be the best quarterback in the country.
That's the rumor.
That is the rumor.
Are you going to charge people for that information?
Yeah, $11.99 a month.
You can get away with it. Other people do. Anyway, no, but we will have media coming up tomorrow for the first time. We'll get to talk to players. We're going to have a chance to talk to Brent Venables on Saturday. They are having the Meet the Sooners Day is back if you are a One Oklahoma subscriber. I think you can get in the bottom floor. That's like $15 a month or something. See, we're cheaper. Don't get autographs though. You get George's autograph if you want.
I'll give it to you.
Subscriber.
I've got a great signature.
Oh, guys, new report in. Actually, Jackson Arnold was not the best quarterback in the country today. George and I are going to have a point-counterpoint story later on Soonerscoop.com. You can read all about it. It's going to be fantastic.
By the way, the dollar promo is gone too, by the way. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of people talking
the
about that.
people
So
that are mad be
Grimlock,
most
shut the
happy because
hell
that's
up.
not there? Yes, Grim, shut up. Just shut up.
Sorry, Josh should be proud of me. I'm giving the housekeeper $20 for buying trash bags.
I really am. I am proud of you, Carey. And that's a big moment for us. I'm very excited. You know I love the housekeeper being there. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just in my imagination, but it feels like it keeps the office in better shape, and it avoids George having to throw things out and upsetting the herd. So
I just turned video back on. You can see her doing the conference room glass.
I love it.
Well, you can see her hand anyway.
I don't throw anything away anymore, Josh. Are you guys excited to hear from some players though tomorrow?
Who are we asking for tomorrow? Let's just. What are we looking at? Oh, that's Joe Jr.
Just walked in.
He's back from Alaska.
He is back from Alaska.
Should we throw
I don't
him on
know.
the pod?
I think that.
No,
I think
I don't care.
I think there's a lot of there's a lot of interesting people to talk to. That we haven't talked to Dominic Williams yet. Branson Hickman. I'd love to talk to those guys. We haven't spoken to them, so I think they're interesting guys. Kip Lewis is somebody that I want to talk to. Kendall Dolby. I think there's Robert Spears Jennings. I feel like he has been the talk of the summer.
You're man crushing.
Yeah, I've just heard a lot of really good things about him from the summer. So I think that he'd be really good to talk to. Gavin Sawchuk kind of taking over that room. And I'd love to talk to the assistant coaches, but I don't think we're going to get to.
Yeah, I know that's not in the plans. It's going to be players only, and then Brent on Saturday. It'll be interesting too how long Brent goes. I mean, I imagine it'll be close to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
On Saturday, yes.
I guess it's better that we did get quite a bit of stuff from him.
It was great that you guys went to the
Coaches
Fostering
luncheon.
Futures deal. Yeah.
The coaches luncheon was excellent last week. I just, it's kind of one of those things that the excitement is definitely there that practice has started and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's, you get one practice in where they basically ran around in, shorts and helmet. It's like there's not a whole lot that's going to be coming out of that.
Should
But
have
at the
gone
same
over
time,
there. What are they going to do to you on a day like today? They're
over at the practice field.
Oh
today.
yeah, they weren't at the rugby field.
I think that they did this last year. They
they
practiced
move
on the
over when classes start. I think they'll move over. I think
it
that's
was all
what
in
they
the
did.
morning. It was all in the morning over at the rugby field. I bet they get over there about next week.
When they put pads on, they'll probably get over there
Exactly. Because they can use
They don't
both the
need the
fields and all that
room.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
right now.
I think that they did this last year, though. They started out on the practice field, and then they moved over to the rugby field.
For those of you that are listening from out of state, it is miserable in Oklahoma right now.
very hot.
I mean, triple digits all week long.
Heat advisory all week.
It's a dangerous situation out there. So hopefully, Saturday's what I'm worried about. The reporters have been going down a lot lately.
Yeah, stay hydrated. That's the key for this week. But I'm excited to get out to practice, talk to some of the guys, and also just hear Brent's thoughts too on this fall camp. I think that it's not just about camp, like you said. We won't learn a whole lot of new information after just a couple of days of practice. But
I think the offensive line is going to be, everybody's going to be interested in talking to as many of those guys as possible.
I'm interested to hear what Brent says about. We haven't really asked him where exactly Woody is playing. Woody Washington.
I think that's a very interesting question because we talked about it on the YouTube show yesterday, just in terms of the secondary. They have so many options at safety. You also feel pretty confident about what they have at quarterback. I mean, I think Kenai Walker and Des Malone could hold down one side of the field while Gentry, if you can keep him healthy and keep him out there, I think he's going to be just fine. Like, it seems like, and, as much talk as there has been about Robert Spears Jennings, George, I know we've kind of heard the same things just in terms of what Gentry did this summer. It sounds like, not to say that the light had never come on, but it definitely seems like if he can just stay healthy and stay out onto the field, I don't think it's crazy that, we talked about it the other day. He could work his way into the second day of the draft. I don't know if he's going to be a first round guy on that Thursday night, but for sure on the next day on Friday.
Yeah, biggest question with him is can he stay healthy for a full season? Because
Well, remember last preseason, he had the feigning spell.
Yeah.
But if he can stay healthy, I think that he's obviously an elite guy at corner. And then that other side is just really interesting if Woody's not playing corner, which I don't think he's going to. So I don't know. I think that's a really interesting spot. I think what they do at the other linebacker spot, you feel good about it. But who is it going to be? I'm guessing it'll be Kip Lewis, but Lewis Carter was great in the spring, and then that defensive line. I'm curious to hear. What does David Stone look like? Is he somebody that can actually contribute? We hear a lot about Jaden Jackson, but can David Stone take that next step? So,
and we'll be back on the R. Mason Thomas watch for sure. I mean, talk about people staying healthy.
Yeah.
He's right up there, I think, with Gentry Williams.
And I think and then on offense, there's some injury questions. Like, I know that we got a little bit of an update in Dallas on Andrew Anthony and Jalil Farouk, but what is their status? Do they think that they could possibly play by the Tennessee game or even the season opener? And then Jake Roberts is back at tight end. What does that look like? There's Garrett Hatchett, I think, is a real player at left guard. Like, I think he could win that left guard job. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions going into it.
You know how, during the off season, you'll get a lot. It's kind of like you've mentioned some things already today about, you've heard that Robert Spears Jennings has had a really good summer. You think it's the same mental effect when you play EA Sports and like Jake Roberts is really good at tight end and you're like, wow, he could really be a player. Like Gavin Sawchuk is an amazing tailback. And it's like, oh, Gavin Sawchuk, I see him on EA Sports all the time. He must be a pretty good player. He must be a Heisman contender.
I don't know. I mean, it is a video game.
I'm saying the mental aspect of it, because you're always starving for football, and then when you're playing the stupid game, and it's like Jaron Kanik is like really fast on that game.
They made Jaron Kanik really good in the game. Like his athletic attributes are insane in that game. So
I don't think
he won the Heisman my second year in the game. He won the Heisman Trophy.
That's funny.
I think that's foreshadowing. I do think that like he's been one of those guys, and you could probably put a list of 5 or 6, 7 names that have been a little forgotten about just going into this year, just in terms of, okay, maybe they're going to be a little bit better than you thought they were, because I do think that like the rating or whatever they have him on NCAA, that it does correlate to some athletic ability that is very obvious.
They're about Kanik.
Yeah, and I think that like even going back, and I've been cataloging some of these games on the back end of the year, that it's like, oh yeah, Jaron did have a couple really nice plays. That's just
he wasn't
putting it all together.
I don't think Kip Lewis coming in and playing better certainly didn't look good, but what Jared Kanik was last year wasn't that off from where Danny Stutzman was at that point in his career.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think maybe even a little bit of I don't want to say ahead of where Danny was, but when you consider that he is still learning the position to a certain extent. And, Billy Bowman said it, I think, to Andy Staples down at SEC Media today, just in terms of, I think Andy asked him, when did you feel comfortable within Brent's defense? And Billy said that the first time that he really truly felt comfortable was this past spring. I mean, we're talking about a guy that is, on the Jim Thorpe list, on the Nagurski list already. As the watch list stuff comes out, he's a guy that, certainly is going to be one of the top safeties in the SEC, and he's just now feeling comfortable in the defense.
People need to remember with Kanik that he has never played linebacker before. And so I think that oftentimes when you watch him play from a year ago, he's thinking too much, whereas Kip Lewis doesn't think. I mean, he was
a natural in high school. I mean,
Yes.
watching him in the state playoffs, Josh, I mean, I just remember seeing Kip Lewis going, man, this kid, I don't know if he's big enough to be a star, but he plays like a star. Like he knew where the ball was before the ball carrier.
Which, by the way, he's up to 221 now, so Kip Lewis is.
Carthage, right?
I missed that. Wow, that's huge for him. I mean, because guys, that's in the realm of reality. Like that's the realm of like you can play at that size. And I know everybody has this idea that like you got to be a 240-pound linebacker in the SEC. Look at Georgia's guys. They're not like that. I mean, now they're bigger than 220, but 221's at least like okay, like you're in that conversation. And guys, to me, every snap that Kip Lewis is on the field for OU next year, they're a better team for it. Like I see a world where he is OU's best linebacker of this era, and I know what I'm saying there. Obviously, Danny's a great player, but Kip has that thing where he's just always around the ball. Like he has a knack for it, and then when you mix that with his athleticism, I don't know. Like the guy he always reminds me of is the guy that played with Gerald for years in Tampa Bay, Levante David. Like kind of undersized, super athletic, and is just an incredible football player.
Yeah, I think you probably, for Oklahoma, you probably have to go back to Teddy Lehman as, and he was more known as a running back coming out of high school, but just instinctual, did the right things, like made Brent Venables happy with, your first step kind of stuff. Like he was a mechanic basically. I think Kip Lewis is probably, even before that, you probably have to go back to, guys like the Boz that were just natural linebackers that they were born to play the position. And Kip just seems like a guy that was born to play. Danny's come into it, but Kip, he was born for it.
And I think we need to remember, I think they're going to play a little bit more 3-3-5, at least in some situations where they have three linebackers out there and you throw a Kanik out there as your third linebacker because he's a guy that you could rush some.
Well, remember, he was
edge.
In the Cheetah plans early last year.
In Brent's first year. Yeah. And I think that there's some different formations where they're going to have multiple guys out there, or Lewis Carter. Like, I think he's somebody that is going to push for more playing time this year. Samuel Almacigo. Like, they just have many guys
That's
there.
what makes everything about this next month so interesting, is because you can sit here, you can name 4 or 5 other guys outside of the starter, maybe not 4 or 5, but at least 2 or 3 other names at a position, maybe outside of defense, like interior defensive line. That's I can see him playing quite a bit this year.
Well, you guys talked about it on the preview show yesterday, the fall camp preview. We know you have Billy Bowman, but you also have Peyton Bowen. Then you have Woody Washington, that's potentially involved at safety.
And how does Robert Spears-Jennings fit into things? There's been a bunch of praise for somebody like Reggie Powers coming into the season, coming off of the summer. Now, I don't think that those guys are going to be playing a whole lot if things go the right way, but you at least can bank on, as cliche and kind of eye roll as it became in hearing the words competitive depth last season, they actually have built something on that side of the football that makes you think that they have other options if, God forbid, somebody were to go down early in the season.
I mean, no one's too far removed from the days when you couldn't get Patrick Fields or
100%.
Or
Justin Broyles off the field.
Oh, yeah, Justin Broyles.
Well, Justin Broyles, you could get him off the field really easy as long as God, what Broncos? You covered him at the Broncos.
De'Laren
Turner-Yell was healthy.
Sure.
But they literally would play every snap at safety because that's all they had.
Yeah. It's just finally being able to kind of see it come together. And what something that I know that we've been talking about over the last year and a half, 2 years, and just kind of the job that Brandon Hall's been able to do.
It really is amazing. And guys, what really amazing, we're talking about the depth, and you're right, Eddie, that's been such a punchline-y term, and it's so popular around college football right now. But guys, George was talking about, okay, you run that 3-3-5 and you do some stuff with, Jaron Kanik, doing some stuff with the blitz. Guys, we haven't even mentioned Deshaun McCullough, who is a guy that had some really big moments last year and really showed himself as a playmaker near the line of scrimmage. If Oklahoma could get him in some situations like that where he's standing over a tight end or he's doing, some of the stuff that he actually did in that goal line stand against Texas last year, there's a lot that you can do with him. And I think that's what, gosh, if I just said gosh, I don't think I've ever said gosh, but that's a new one. But if I'm an offensive coordinator having to deal with all the stuff, all the weapons that Brent Venables now kind of finally has at his disposal, and obviously Zach Alley as well, when you have all those guys and you can use them in so many different ways, that's a nightmare for a guy that's as creative as Venables is and as many looks as he's going to throw at all these SEC quarterbacks.
I will say there are some rumblings that maybe Deshaun McCullough is not full go to start camp. Well, I don't know that for sure, but I know there's some rumblings about that, so we'll see.
Eddie will be in the bushes. soon.
Yeah, we'll just ask Brent on Saturday. It's really hot outside. I don't know how long I could last outside. The homeless guy laying on the bench yesterday.
Oh my God.
On Campus Corner at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was just like, dude,
A steel bench,
that
too.
thing has to be 1,000 degrees. I don't know how you're doing it.
He was really tired.
You guys want to hear a crazy stat?
Sure. Doesn't seem like we have an option. What are you going to say?
OU brought in 5 transfer offensive linemen that combined for 99 career starts in college football. Guess how many OU has had on their roster before they got those transfers in? Like how many guys
returning had starting games?
Yeah.
I think it's less than 5, right?
No, because you would have had
There's only 2 guys.
Everett and
Everett
Sexton.
and Sexton probably less than 15. Yeah,
17 starts.
I do think that like the offensive line thing has kind of become a very interesting talking point, just in terms of it seems like, and I wouldn't expect Brent or somebody to go on the stage at this coach's luncheon and just completely shit on the offensive line. But at the same time, I do think that there is like a sense of confidence that they feel like, at least with the starting 5, they have a lot of experience.
I think they're betting on the experience of the transfers paying off. And while I agree to an extent on a couple of them, there's also a couple that I'm like, okay, but they were on bad football teams. Like a Spencer Brown, for example, he has a lot of career, I think like 24 career starts. And that was on a very bad football team.
Sure.
And so I just don't know, like you, I say that stat, but at the same time, it's like, what are those 99 career starts worth? Like, I don't know if Garen Hatchett's, I think it's like 5 or 6 career starts at Washington are more valuable than a Heath Ozaida's 0 starts at Oklahoma. Like, I still think that Heath Ozaida probably has a higher ceiling than somebody like a Hatchett.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, look, it's going to be a story. It's been a storyline all through the spring. It will be all through camp. Every question, I don't even want to say hopefully we'll get to talk to Bill Bedenbaugh because I don't expect that that'll happen. But
it'd be nice.
It'd be super nice. Here's the great thing about talking to Bill is like just getting to take his temperature. Like if he comes out pissed off and doesn't want to talk, it's not going well. But if it is going well, he'll tell you it's going well.
And I think we should also say that we're going to hear a lot of stuff out of camp about who's standing out on the offensive line and who's running with the first team and all of that. I think it's also fair to say that we probably won't really know who their best 5 are until partway through the season. And that's been the case now for a while with Bill. But I just wouldn't. I'm not saying don't take stock into it in camp, but the odds of them having a starting line against Temple and that same starting line being the same line against Texas, I just think is low.
Virtually 0.
Yes.
And that's what Bill does. He mixes and matches, and he finds the best combination. It's not necessarily the best 5 players. It's the best 5 players playing together.
I just think what I will say is I think that the best 5 is some combination of Jacob Sexton is in that 5. I think Fabici is in that 5, and I think Hickman's in that 5. The other 2 spots, left guard, I just don't know, and right tackle, I just don't know. And I still think that if Jake Taylor, Spencer Brown just isn't good enough at right tackle, which we've heard good things about them over the summer, I wouldn't be shocked if they say, okay, we'll live with Tarquin at left and put Sexton at right. Like I could see that being like the press the button for emergency type scenario.
Josh, any of those scenarios or just flat out your thoughts on the offensive line? What do you make of Garen Hatchett and what he could be or what he's going to be for this team? Just because he's one of those guys that's such an unknown coming in and not going through spring, but he has been around. It seems like that left guard thing is going to be rather interesting, as well as George said with right tackle.
Yeah, I'm with George. I think 3 starters. Now, we know Fabici at right guard. We know Hickman at center. And then Sexton at one of the tackles. Like that to me, that's the best possible lineup based on what we know. Now, the other 2, like you guys have said, that I think that's a question. To me, I couldn't agree more that I want to give Heath Ozaida every chance at left guard. And it's an interesting thing because, guys, we know that Bill does. Bill values experience, and he values that. But like George was just saying, like, how much experience does Hatchett have? Because, yeah, he played at Washington, and Ozida hasn't played yet, but Ozida's also been healthy. He's been around. He's been part of this program, running that offense. Like, he knows he frankly just knows more about what's going on right now than Hatchett does. I just believe that. And I also think he is, for this offensive line to be as good as it can be, I feel like Ozida's got to be one of the 5 starters. Like, that's just what I believe based on the things we've heard about that kid since he arrived. Like, they've talked differently about him. I don't, and I've said it before, and I kind of hate to make the comparison, but it kind of reminds me of Creed Humphrey. Like, he's a lot better than you think he is. Like, he's a big deal. This is almost like, oh, you got more than they realized they were getting. And I'm not saying they didn't like him out of high school, but I think he's been even better than they hoped he was going to be. I think you have to go through those growing pains. What I will say, what I think is interesting, we know Bill likes to tinker. We talk about that all the time. What do you guys make of the idea that he can't really tinker until Texas, like we've seen him do through the years? Like, Tennessee might have the best defensive line in the country. Like, I don't think it's probably better than Michigan's, but I think it might be the best in the SEC.
It's a one matchup, I think, in that schedule to start the season where you're just like, they just aren't going to be as good as the other team on that, at that matchup.
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
James Pierce, he could terrorize somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they got to figure it out by then, and especially, I think they're going to figure it out at left guard, or they can, like, if you told me Hatchett started there, I could live with that at left guard. Like Josh said, I think the ceiling is higher with Ozida starting at left guard, but you can live with Hatchett there. It's right tackle that I just have no idea what they're going to do, because Jake Taylor, we've said it again and again, Josh views him as a guard. I also kind of view him as a guard, but like, I also think he's probably better than Spencer Brown at right tackle. Like, I just don't know what they're going to do at that right tackle spot. And part of me still thinks, like, what if no one emerges there? Maybe you could push, Fabecchi's played right tackle, I think, at North Texas. Like, maybe you could push him out to right tackle, and then you have Hatchett at right guard and Ozida at left guard. Like, I don't know. There's so many different options they could do there. It's just the right tackle spot is the one that, for me, Josh, that I really just have no idea what they're going to do.
Yeah, and I mean, my recruiting brain just wants Logan Howland to be ready to go.
Yeah,
because I think Logan Howland's going to be really good. I don't think he's ready yet.
We've talked about it before, Josh, just in terms of like physically and what he came in at to what he is now. Somebody pointed it out to me in one of the one of the videos that they had put out here over the last 24 hours. He looks like a completely different person.
6'6", 317.
It's crazy, guys, for a tight end 2 years ago.
Yep. I mean, when he committed to OU, I want to say the day he committed, we had the conversation, and he was 262 pounds or 265 pounds or something like that. I mean, like, he was still miles. I mean, that's 50 pounds ago. So it's just unbelievable what he's done. And guys, to me, it says something to his level of buy-in that he's been able to do that. Because I don't care, training table and weight room and big body and all that stuff, that's still a lot of work to put on that kind of weight while working with Schmitty all summer and doing all the stuff that we know you're just going to be sweating away pounds. Like, that's a lot of dedication, which makes me think he's probably putting in the work with Bill too. Again, do I think there's any way he starts a season opener? No, I really don't. If you told me he's a starter by Texas, I don't think that's nuts. It's going to be very dependent on what we're talking about. What happens at right tackle? Because if you can put Logan at left tackle and switch Jake Sexton to right tackle, it's young and it's not the dream, but it's also a big build toward 2025, which we all think maybe has a chance to be a really good team with so much potentially returning. So, again, that's not the way they're going to look at it, I know. But at the same time, I think that is your highest upside offensive line if you could make that all come together and work. But I agree. And, guys, the other reality is left guard you can hide that a little bit.
Yep.
You can do, if that's not right what it needs to be, you can make that okay. Especially he'll be whoever that is lined up right next to Hickman. Hickman can get him in the right situations. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's a super veteran guy. Right tackle, you can't hide that. Like, if you do, you're having to keep Bauer sharp in, or you're having to chip with somebody. Like, you're having to take away parts of your offense to mask that. At left guard, it's a lot easier to cover that deficiency.
All right, I think that's a lot covered on the offensive line, and I do. We spend so much time, not obsessed, but just focusing on the offensive line. I think a really good question too is, besides Dominic Williams and DeJohn Terry, who has to step up on the defensive line interior?
Grayson Halton.
Yeah. It's a Grayson Halton is a kind of a same case as Jake Taylor, I think, on the offensive line, where it's like we keep kind of hearing his name, and now it's like
flashes.
Any flashes.
He
It's
had
now or
a
never.
really good second half against West Virginia.
Yeah.
I just got done cutting that game up yesterday.
Because we've been back and forth like Ashton Sanders, the Jaden Jackson thing. I say it's pie in the sky because he's a true freshman, but we all know he has tons of ability, and you think that he could be something. But
I think he's in the
hoping that
rotation.
Jaden Jackson is a factor is not good place to pin your hopes.
I think he's somebody that you can expect to be a part of the rotation. Is he going to be in there on a 4th and 1 with the game on the line? I don't know. I think that's fair to say. But I think that they need a Grayson Halton to step up and be somebody that is not just a rotation guy, but is like firmly playing quite a bit.
Yeah, and more than anything, I think you just want to, like everybody on the team, but maybe more specifically with the defensive line, you just want to keep Dominic Williams and you want to keep DeJohn Terry extremely healthy.
But you also need to
get
him someone, whether it's Halton or any of those trio of young guys like Marcus Strong, Ashton Sanders, Devon Sears. I mean, and he's an older player, but
if they can get 2 of those,
one of those 3
have
have to become a rotational player.
I was going to say 2 of those 4 that you just mentioned needs to be like players, like really playing, like really step up, and they're playing like half the game.
And the other thing that
guys, how much are they?
Go ahead, Josh.
How much are they helped? Like George mentioned, going to that 3-3-5. How much would that help them? Because then the rotations are smaller. You're able to. You're running in. Instead of having to get to your 4th or 5th guy, you really don't have to get to your 3rd or 4th guy in most cases, unless it's just an exceedingly long, brutal drive. And you can't do it all the time, but you wonder, like, at certain points of the game, like, hey, we got to give our guys a blow. We're going to go 3-3-5 here, mix it up. Like, how much of that is just to kind of make the numbers work a little bit on that interior of the defensive line, which it's better than it was or that we thought it was going to be in June. But now it's still not ideal. They're still a little young, a little green.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have really good production out of David Stone as a freshman, I think, if you're going to be successful doing a lot of 3-3-5.
Well, and I wonder if you're doing, Josh, could you see them doing a scenario where I could see them running a 3-3-5, and maybe it's like 3rd down and long or something, and you've got Ethan Downs on one edge, you've got Dominic Williams in the middle, and then David Stone, maybe you got him on the other edge, and then you're rushing Kanik or McCullough or somebody.
Do you bring in like
off the edge? Do
you possibly bring in like PJ Adeboroughe as a linebacker, stand-up linebacker?
I don't know. Like I think
like R. Mason Thomas is like a stand-up or something.
Thomas.
Like absolutely. Like you could do some really unique stuff like that.
That's what I'm thinking, because that's where I see David Stone's role being. Now, if they're running a 4-man front, I could see him also being the rotation more interiorly, but I could also see them, maybe putting him on the edge every once in a while in different situations.
I mean, Brent was here when they ran the spinner stuff. I mean, he's got to still have some variation of that in his defense.
Yep. Oh, R. Mason Thomas is a stand-up outside guy. To me, that's his best role. Like, that's where he would be most lethal, when he can get out to like a wide 7 and play real far out there and just pin his ears back and come downhill.
I would say, it would be interesting if they develop that role, because I think that's a role that, when they did that with Spinner, they did it to kind of get Dan Cody and Larry Burdine just going all over the field to where offensive lines couldn't identify if they were coming or not, or what hole, what gap they were going to be in. I would think that could fast track somebody, a younger guy like a Danny Okoye, maybe Nigel Smith, maybe.
Yep. I could with Danny, because Danny is one of those guys. It's just a natural kind of gifted pass rusher. Like, he's not going to know everything, and it's going to be too deep for him in some situations this year as he learns and he's catching up with the speed and, you know, just the physicality of this level of football. It's so different than where he's come from. But if you're 3rd and long, like, to me, your two most natural instinctive pass rushers on this roster are Mason Thomas and Danny Okoye. Now, I don't know if Danny's going to be ready. I don't want to put that on him. We don't know. We'll have to see. But just from we know this is a passing situation and we want to let our guys get upfield and try to create a problem, those are two that make a lot of sense to me.
Can Trace Ford be that guy?
Guys, do you feel like there's still some room for him to go from last year? Like, I don't remember at any point last year thinking like I was seeing the best of Trace Ford.
Sure, maybe something that it's in the back of his mind, still thinking about the knee.
Well, I mean, he said
it may just be that second year.
I'll tell you this. I mean, we had him. He was like our NIL guy last year on the radio station in the mornings. He openly talked about how traumatizing all his injuries were at Oklahoma State, and he didn't leave Oklahoma State because he didn't love the school or, you know, he already had his degree. He just needed to go somewhere else because all he could think about was his injuries. And if he went on that field, he was going to get injured again. Like, it was truly traumatizing for him. Now, going through last year, being healthy the entire year, I do think he could make a jump because I think he can play a little bit more free than he has since he's had that second injury.
I'm going to disagree. I don't know. I think Trace Ford is a nice player, and you
the injuries have taken too much of his athleticism away.
And there was times last year that, like, I think back to the Kansas game where he just wasn't good. Like, he would rush too far up the field or he'd get beat on the edge. Like, I just think they have some other guys. And again, I think having a guy that with that experience, like, if you get in a situation where some guys get hurt, like, you feel good about somebody like that stepping in and at least playing. But I just think they have better players there. Like, if you're talking about Ethan Downs and PJ Adebawore and R. Mason Thomas and then Caden Woolard, who I think is a solid player. Like,
I just think he's the guy that we never talk about, we don't know enough about. Like, he could come out of nowhere.
Did you see the On3 graphic that they put out returning NCAA players that led the country in sacks last year?
He was on it.
He was 4th.
He was just such during the spring, he was learning the defense. I mean, you would look over there, and it was always weird because the defensive ends were the furthest away from us of anybody outside of the offensive linemen, like if we could only stay on one side. But, I mean, I would sit over there and watch, and you know, you'd see Danny Okoye over there, and you'd see Caden Woolard, but we just never saw enough situations where we could tell what he really was.
Guys, he's also just so much bigger than Trace Ford.
He's so big. Yeah.
6'4", 259. Trace Ford is 6'2", 246. Like, he's just a bigger body out there. And the thing is like Trace Ford's about the same size as R. Mason Thomas, but doesn't have near the twitch that R. Mason does off the edge. And that's just where I'm just like, again, you take Trace Ford back because he can help you in a lot of different ways and you want experience and to be able to rotate there. But there's just guys at that position that I'm like, they just have better players, more athletic players that can do things on the edge where, yeah, maybe they take too far of an angle upfield or maybe they don't contain the edge as well, but they can make up for it with their athleticism.
Well, and George, you get into that conversation too where at what point are you going to let PJ Adebawore out there and let him make mistakes and let him learn how to do this? Like, because at some point, he's just going to have to learn by fire. Like, there's too much talent. You can't keep him off the field forever. But at some point, you're taking snaps away from him by putting guys out there that are good, solid players, but are never going to be the guys that are difference makers in your program like PJ has a chance to be.
I just think the whole thing offensively is fascinating too. I mean, we can go over every position on defense and say, well, this guy could step up. This guy could be a hidden guy that we're not talking about and have a really big year. I think offensively, You've got so many people that you've been waiting to see what they're going to do. And you've got some intriguing newcomers. I mean, I just think, Taylor Tatum, like, what are we going to hear about him early in camp?
The running back position, I just feel like no one is talking about that because we talk a lot about the receiver.
Barnes, what's he going to be? I mean,
I thought Caleb Hicks ran the ball well during the spring.
Caleb Hicks, just seeing him getting the viewing experiences that we had last year, you walk out there, you can't help but notice Caleb Hicks. I mean, he is a monster.
Here's the thing with the running back position for me.
That's standing next to Javonte Barnes, by the way.
I think that they have some nice players. I don't know who's the dude. Who's the guy that is just an absolute dude? And I think Sawchuk can maybe be that guy. But do they have a dude at running back?
I think Sawchuk is the new Kennedy Brooks. Like, he doesn't look the part, but he's always gaining yards and he's always finding creases. He's always getting downfield where other people don't. Like, Javonte Barnes is the anti-Kennedy Brooks right now so far in his career.
In a way, Gavin Sawchuk reminds me of. Do you remember Trey Franks came in and he was like, "Oh man, he's this track guy and he can fly and he's so fast and blah blah blah," but it would never show up. Like, you never saw him like have that moment where you're like, "Holy crap!"
He'd never break.
Yes, and that's the way it is with Sawchuk. He's like super steady. He's a good player. I don't want to dismiss that at all. But do I think he's like a guy that could be a 1,500-yard back at some point? No. I don't really believe that. Now, he doesn't have to be. Like, it's a little bit different era of football. I understand that. But to me, like what George is talking about, if there's a guy that's going to be a dude in that room, it's Taylor Tatum. Yep. Like, to me, he is the guy that has the chance to have that kind of ceiling. And, again, you can't just say, well, we're going to play all the guys with the highest ceiling. I get it. This isn't dynasty on NCAA. You're not just going to play for next year. But there is a situation where how many carries do you need to get Taylor Tatum to really find out what you got and see, is he a guy that could help you late in the season against LSU and Alabama? Like, you're going to have to test him and see what you really have there.
And the other position to me, outside of running back, like, tight end's really easy. I mean, you got Jake Roberts, you got Bauer Sharp, Caden Helms, and
Cade McIntyre, Devon Mitchell.
Like, I still don't think Devon Mitchell is ready to make an impact yet. I think he still needs another year, grow into his body, all that stuff. But Caden Helms and Cade McIntyre, it's make or break for them this year if they're going to be involved in the tight end position. And I think that does a tight end. What to me is the most interesting is wide receiver with Jill Farouk and Andrell Anthony not being available, not expected to be available at the very start because, look, we all know Nick Anderson can make plays. We believe Deion Burke's going to be a difference maker. But, Brennan Thompson, Jaquez Petaway, we saw some good stuff from J.J. Hester.
Jaden Gibson, watch out.
Jaden Gibson, yeah. I mean, I like some of the stuff I saw out of not Brennan Thompson, but Zion Kearney. I mean, I think he could be a guy that fits in. So, and it really is going to be all about who develops the best relationships with Jackson Arnold, I think, in fall camp.
I will say, like, just for Caden Helms, yes, I think it is a make or break year. You got to stay healthy. You got to be able to contribute at some point. It's damn near your third year here in Norman. But at the same time, it's like Cade McIntyre, I liked what we saw. We just saw such a small sample size last year before he broke his hand.
And he's just 221 on the roster.
Yeah, it's a little bit maybe light, I guess. I don't know. I think he's a great football player, though. And it seems like those types of guys can
just need him to look a bigger part than he is.
I don't think he's going to grow any unless he's going to get taller.
I'm saying fill out. He's already 6'3".
I think Helms is the one that could be, if he's healthy.
I've been saying it since spring. Like, don't give up on this guy quite yet. Now, he has to stay healthy. Sure. Yeah.
I think he's also just a different type of tight end than Bauer Sharp and Jake Roberts. Like, I think he's somebody that you could put in the slot and do some different things. So I'm interested to see if they're able to use him in different ways.
I do think guys, go ahead, Josh.
Just quickly, I was going to say, with Caden Helms, does it remind you, I mean, and it's probably not even fair to the player I'm about to compare him to, but does it remind you a little bit of Marcus Major? Well, we talked about it last year. How much can you count on Marcus Major when he's never stayed healthy? Like, at some point, like, how much are you going to build things around Caden Helms? We're going to do this, or we're going to make this for him. We might put a little package in where we could do this with Caden Helms, and you're going to spend your valuable practice time. and the guy can't stay healthy. Like that's not Caden's fault. I'm not knocking him for it, but to me that would scare me as a coach to put too much energy into it and to have a guy that's just proven to be unreliable. And it's not like, again, I hate saying it because it's not his fault. Injuries happen. It's just part of it, but they just seem to happen to him and other players in an inordinate amount.
Yeah, it's like anything. I mean, he's a brand. You want to get into NIL terms, you can't build something around a brand that's not reliable. So he's got to work his way into the rotation, into being a playmaker before you can just make him, build your offense around him.
And it's kind of a unique situation too, just in terms of because he's been so hurt over the last 2 years, or the better part of the last 2 years, he really hasn't played football in 2 years. It's going to take some time for him to get just in general his legs back underneath him per se, being out on a practice field,
get into football shape.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's the other thing, like you said, you can do so many things with him. What if Seth Luttrell builds his offense, around a tight end that's a little bit more of, not a hidden secret, but, little deception. I mean, like, he's going to have, what if he has guys with Bauer Sharp and Jake Roberts are ended up being guys that, that you think they're into block, but all of a sudden they're out in a pass route, catching passes versus being a guy that's split out and just running routes. Like, how will Caden Helms fit into that offense? I think those are all questions that we're going to have to learn watching Seth Luttrell's offense and how he uses the tight end.
Yeah. The wide receiver thing is, it's fascinating too, just from a perspective of there are a number of guys. There's not a lot of guys with experience coming back, but there is a good handful of guys that I think that you can kind of put it into a group that had, at least in my mind, separated themselves from everybody else.
I just trust Emmett Jones too. Like
Sure.
And I know that's crazy to maybe say after just 1 year, but like last year, let's not forget going into fall camp, we were like, what the hell are they going to do at receiver? Like, they don't have the dudes that they need at receiver. And we were talking about how great the running back room was, and it was just the complete opposite. So I just trust that they'll be able to figure it out. They are young. When you take out Farouk and Anthony, like, they just don't have as much experience, but I just trust that they'll be able to find, they have enough playmakers in that room that they'll find guys. And I just think Jaden Gibson, we just keep hearing his name, and what we saw in the spring where Jackson kind of, built a connection with him, probably basically because all these other guys were out. Like even Nick Anderson didn't go through spring. Like,
right.
I think that helped probably Jaden a lot. And all we saw last year was when Jaden got opportunities, he made plays. So I think he's going to be a big factor in this thing.
Deion Burks, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, those are kind of the knowns, as well as obviously Jalil. And then you kind of work your way through everybody else. And I think that, Brennan Thompson looked good in the bowl game. It seemed like the light had come on a little bit for him. Definitely going to be one of those vertical threats for Jackson as much as they want to be able to air it out. Yeah, sure. He's another guy that has to stay healthy. And then, I like Jaquez Petaway to me is somebody that is fascinating going into this year just to see what he's able to do. Is he going to be a guy that kind of backs up Deion Burks in the slot? And then you start working through your way through everybody else. And I mean, that right there is 5-6 guys.
Yeah.
And I just want to see how much they use Deion Burks in how many different ways too.
I think you could imagine it, and then times that by 2, even more.
Probably. And then,
I want to say with George was like, it's crazy to say with Emmett Jones. I know I'm often, especially on the board, the resident OU hater. I will fight the person that isn't believing in Emmett Jones at this point. Like, I don't know what you're looking at. Like, I don't know what you're doing to have a moment of doubt about what that guy's plan is and what he's putting in place. I mean, guys, they're already well on their way in 2026 to having another really good receiver class. Like, it's just crazy, like what he's done in a very short amount of time.
Want to have an uncomfortable conversation that we really haven't had I think a lot of time to spend on, and it's probably because you certainly don't want to be in the position that it would be, but like, who's the backup? Who is the backup quarterback right now? Is it Casey Thompson?
Yeah.
Is he just for sure?
Early
no doubt
in the
about
season,
it?
I think it's Casey Thompson.
I think it's Casey Thompson, unless things just go south and let's say Jackson gets hurt early in the year. I think that I don't know. I still think it's Casey.
A lot of the buzz surrounding
fine.
Michael Hawkins faded with the spring game because it wasn't a superstar performance.
Just in terms of like being able to help immediately, right?
Yeah, I mean, a
looks
veteran,
great.
a guy that could come in and steady things.
Sure.
And
That's why you go out and
here's
get
the thing,
Casey
though.
Thompson.
We don't know what he looks like in this offense because he was hurt all last spring. But look, Michael Hawkins is going to go out there and have a chance to win the backup job. I mean, he'll probably, knowing him and his family, and you know, he's going to go out there to compete to win the starting job. But it's going to be a competition. And if Michael Hawkins is as good as, and it wasn't just like fan stuff. I mean, we were hearing it from people that we know watch practices that Michael Hawkins was really good at times. So if he goes out there and he's that much more impressive than Casey Thompson, he could be your backup.
Sure. It's just
But
something
like I said, if it goes down in the first couple of games,
yeah,
I would feel better about seeing Casey Thompson go out there.
Who would you guys, let's say Jackson Arnold is concussed for the Tennessee game or something. Who would you start at quarterback against Tennessee?
Casey Thompson.
Yeah.
And I think 85% of that has to do with just flat out experience.
Yep. And that's why I just think that he's going to end up being the guy at backup quarterback.
Thanks for putting that image in my head, George.
You're welcome. You got to think doomsday every once in a while because doomsday happens more often than you think.
Oh, we've done the Doomsday Pod before. It did not turn out well.
We looked like prophets.
Yes.
We were geniuses that year.
That's why we don't ever need to do another Doomsday Pod, because we spoke it into existence.
It's easy to say this too, but just, and maybe this is completely biased because we're in the moment, but it just seems like culturally everything is in a much better spot than it would have been back then, coming out of COVID and all that kind of stuff. And not even to mention just from a locker room and from a program standpoint, I think things are in a much better place now than they were back then.
I would say this. It is from that standpoint, the cultural standpoint, I knew that Brent had learned a lot in Clemson from Dabo, but it could not have gone better in terms of if you bring in a coach and it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. And NIL can change things overnight, but the program is in a really good place, regardless of what happens with the record this year. Let's say they go 8-4. Nobody's going to be happy with that. But even so, I would obviously you got to see how those 8 wins and 4 losses play out. But there could be some coaching decisions that are just scratch your head, make you wonder what the hell is going on. But if they went 8-4, I would still feel good about the program moving forward with Brent Venables, just because he's done all that stuff behind the scenes to build a foundation of a solid program.
I think that we get caught up in these records and what record it needs to be, because that's the big picture. To me, it's like 8-4 is okay depending on how the wins and losses came. Like if they're still losing games where the game management is poor at the end of the game, or they're making special teams miscues like last year, then you're like, well, shit. Like, sure, the culture might be,
but you need to do something about your game day operations.
Like, you got to figure that shit out at some point. And we saw improvements at times last year, but like to me, if they go 8-4 and they just lose some just absolutely crazy games to, on the road to Missouri and Ole Miss and LSU, you can live with that. But if they're losing those games because they just made some just horrible mistakes late in games, then like I'm more like, okay, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, no, I agree.
And and that's coming from someone who I think they're going to go 9-3 and they're going to have a good season and possibly get into the playoff. Like I am a believer in the culture, and I think that's why I think that they're going to have a good year and the recruiting and the talent that they've brought in. But those type of losses, at some point, you just got to get them out of your system.
Well, that kind of leads into the final portion of, I guess, what has become a season preview pod. And I think it might be the most important thing in special teams. I mean, that was something that we talked about on the YouTube show, just in terms of one of the top 5 storylines going into the year. They have to be really, really good in special teams, because I don't think that they're good enough on either the offense or the defensive side of the football to be bailed out for poor special teams.
And I don't think any of us are saying that Tyler Keltner, or if Zach Schmidt wins the job, but it sounds like Keltner's the front runner, needs to go out there and start making 50-yard field goals. They
don't need to win the Ray Guy Award or the Luke Rosa. They needed somebody that's dependable.
Make everything under 45 yards. That's all that they're asking. Make under in big moments. Like you can't miss the gimmies. And Brent said that as much at the luncheon. He said we can't miss these layups. And that's been the issue in field goal kicking. And then the punt, like the punting stuff, they figured it out, in the back half of the season last year. But God, it was terrible to start the season. So they got to figure that out. And then I just think their return game, they've too many dynamic players to not be better at kickoff return and punt return.
Yeah, and go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was going to say, and that feeds what George is talking about, where he's saying you can't have these diabolical mistakes that you can avoid. The punting is the perfect example. Guys, there was no big change. They changed personnel, and all of a sudden the punting game was fixed. Like, how did that happen that it was so unseen? Like that, and again, I mean, that's maybe there's a reason that I don't know about, but that was not like, oh, we made this little tinker, we messed with his swing, and his kick a little bit or whatever. They just changed people, and they had both of them there the whole time. Like that, I don't know, like that, and that's one of those things where Nunez seemed like a good guy and all that stuff, but that was almost unforgivable to me because you knew both guys were there, and one, maybe practice was different, but on a game day field, there was no comparison between the two punters, what they were getting out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think punting and kicking is one of those things. It is really about getting your feet put to the fire.
And having and not losing confidence in yourself if you do fail.
And I think that's, we saw Stoops, the way he handled kickers you go through the Jimmy Stevens era, like they had no other choice. They just had to stick with him and hope his confidence turned around, and it never did.
And that's what happened with Zach Schmidt last year. And I don't want to just give him
the same thing. Yeah.
I don't want to just give him a pass because like they probably should have just taken another kicker in the portal before last season, but they did just basically they had no other option is what Brent told us late in the season because
Gavin
Marshall got hurt
and they literally had nobody else to throw out there.
Exactly. So they had to roll the dice.
Had nobody else with the confidence that is like, well, we might as well go with Zach because he's at least been out there. He's at least performed,
and he's got the leg.
Sure,
I think this year you're at least in a better spot because you brought in somebody like a Tyler Keltner. Even though you look at his stats, I know that he's like the all-time leading scorer at what was it, UT
Eastern Tennessee State.
Yeah, but he didn't do anything at Florida State last year. Yeah. So you wonder. And I also just think Brent's now of the mindset of like. He knows he can't just keep walking Zach Schmidt out there. And maybe that helps Schmidt. Maybe Schmidt halfway through the season becomes the guy because Keltner can't do it, or I don't know. But I just think that he knows deep down there's no way he can just keep walking Zach out there.
All right. I think that's going to do it. I know
With
Josh is going to get out of here.
We're picking OU to go 12-0, all four of us.
After what we heard from today's practice, definitely.
Well, for every dollar we have upped the pay, it's a win on the season. So, pay your dues and get your OU wins. That's what we're looking at.
Clear your schedule in December. You're going to be going to a playoff.
We heard that Taylor Tatum will win the Heisman this year as well. So
that'd be something.
Not everything we hear is accurate, but anyway. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks to you guys. Thanks, Josh. Now, what is the schedule? You back on vacation next week?
Yeah, I leave and then I'll be back again. I leave on Saturday, be back Thursday. So I'll miss next week's pod. But after that, back to everything. We'll be looking, at that point, it'll be getting close to Michael Fasusi's decision. Actually hoping to catch up with Christian Jones here a little later on. So, members be around the site. I'm hoping to have some news from him in the next, 48 hours. Not like he's going to commit or anything like that, but just hoping to have an update with him and kind of get a clearer picture of what he's thinking right now. So there Scoop will be on Friday. I mean, we're going to have some content still coming. I don't want anybody to think these next 3 days I'm just not doing anything, but may have some more Sooners Under the Stars stuff as I can follow up with some of those guys. But yeah, so people have to deal without me for about 5 days, and then it'll just be back to everything being normal.
And by the way, as far as the money front is concerned, there's some good news for YouTube and recruiting. The second laptop came in yesterday, so we'll be able to have Josh and recruits on in large windows now moving forward. So, yeah, we invested in a second, guest module, I guess you could say, for our YouTube videos. So, more of that to come with recruit videos and Josh and all that stuff. So, excited about that going into the season as well.
Yeah,
need to get Jayden O'Neal back
there are
on
several
again.
guys wanting to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's been really cool. I've been really good to see us getting that done more and more. So
I think the first one's with Kamala Harris. An interesting pick, but I think that's who we're going to go with.
All right, Eddie got it in. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here from Soonerscoop.com.